What's up, YouTube? Today gonna continue the Mossberg 640 KC. I'm gonna take apart the trigger assembly for you guys. So I'm gonna skip everything that I did in the last video and then just get the trigger group out. Main thing you gotta remember is that big screw right there in the middle. You're gonna want to take that one out, and then the gun's gonna slide out from the stock, and I'll show you how to take the trigger group out from there. Well, here's the gun, there's the stock. I'm actually going to flip-flop these. I'm going to take the stock off and put the gun up here, just so you guys know what I did. Kind of know what you're looking at. I'm going to move it. Really all you got to do is make sure that the firing pin's depressed. I got the safety off. It's depressed, and this right here, this kind of T-handle, it's got this spring in front of it. It's got a rod that goes down to hold your hammer forward. You're going to want to push down on that, and it's going to pop right out. Kind of pay attention how the gun goes together when you're taking it apart too. You'll notice an E-clip here. There's really no need to take this off unless it's real gummed up and needs to be cleaned. So I'm going to set that aside. And don't make fun of my pink towel. So looking inside, I know you can't really see much, it's not great light, but this right here, this moving piece, that's your hammer that goes down to strike the firing pin. On the inside of the gun, it would hit the back of the bolt, strike the firing pin, and that's what's under the spring tension. Okay, we're looking at the other side of the gun now. You'll notice an E-clip there, another E-clip that holds your trigger on, and then this last one, it's a little spring. It kind of uses its own tension to lock itself down. I'm going to take this one apart first. You're just going to push up on here. And you'll see how that pin is shaped. It sits right on the inside of that steel. So when you take that apart, you should just be able to lift this up and then pull this pin off, just like that. Push the pin out the back side, and again, pay attention to how this this gun is put apart. So there's that pin. And there's a spring. Okay, I'm going to turn the gun upside down so the hammer will fall out. Along with this, you could actually just take this lever out. Keep in mind that that waver in it goes on the inside of the trigger housing. And that hammer fell down inside, but you just turn the gun upside down and that'll come right out. There's the hammer, and this is pretty self-explanatory how this goes back in. Obviously, this pin from earlier needs to set inside that little hole, so you're going to put your hammer back in, sitting like this inside the gun. Next is going to be these two E-clips, and you'll notice when we took that first pin out, this piece right here comes all the way back and connects to the trigger near the top of the gun. You can see as I move the trigger forward and back, it moves that pin back, and this is what keeps your trigger in place. Another thing to keep in mind is this other spring right here. If you can see that inside, just before you take the gun apart, or if you got it in pieces and you're putting it back together, notice how this is supposed to sit in here. Don't want to be messing around with that forever, trying to get it back in, trying to put the spring behind it or anything. Keep that in front of the trigger, and you want these ears on the top side. There's not a whole lot behind this. Really all that is your safety, and the only thing that's inside there is a little ball bearing right underneath this piece. and that's just what holds your safety forward, backward. But I'm not going to take that one apart. I'm just going to take the trigger apart. There's that E-clip. And then the pin's going to fall out the other side. It should. Yeah. Clean this a few times. That pin out. I'm going to leave the spring there, but the trigger should slide right out now. There's that. And there's really not a whole lot more to it. I was telling you about that second screw earlier. There it is. So if you're going to take the trigger housing off, you're going to need to take the trigger assembly apart just to get this trigger housing off. Well, I resituated the gun, and I'm going to put everything back in it, including pins. I'm not going to put any clips on. I'm going to put everything back together, and then I'm going to flip the gun around and then put the clips back in. That E-clip and then the spring-loaded one over here. So it's opposite of disassembly from what I just did. Go ahead and put your trigger back in. And this pin. And both these pins are the same length. It might be a good idea to remember which one went where, but in my opinion, it doesn't matter. See, that went through the other side. I'm gonna go with this lever. Again, that's that lever that goes down when the bolt goes down. And again, this wavered edge, this is what goes inside. It goes inside that trigger housing. So go ahead and slide that in there. And then the hammer. This one might be a little tricky one-handed, just because you have to hold this rod that's connected to the trigger. You got to hold that up as you do with this. You got to keep that in line. Yeah, I'm stuck somewhere. I don't know what the issue is. Oh, it's just got to come over a little bit. Huh. I don't know why that's being such a pain, but there it went. Okay, I'm going to flip the gun around and put the E-clip and that spring-loaded pin back in. That little guy right there. So the E-clip's just going to go back on this one, but the main one I wanted to show was the spring-loaded pin going back on it here. So again, that waver edge, it's going to go back here, and the straight one's going to go up here. Okay, so I'm going to pull this out just so that end doesn't catch. I want the front end to catch first. So that's going to go on just like that. You're going to push it over the edge. And in this one, you're just going to use the tension of the spring to pull up and push in. And it's going to seat right there. So that's the front one. I'm going to put the E-clip on the back. And then we'll go ahead and put the main spring back in. Okay, right now the hammer is in the dropped position as if you just pulled the trigger. So go ahead and just push the trigger forward a little bit and lift the hammer up, then drop it, and it'll stop right there as if the weapon were cocked. That notch cut out in the hammer, that circular notch cut out, that's what this end of the spring-loaded pin fits into, this T-shaped pin. So while it's up, you can fit this pin into that hole and let it rest just like that. Now you want to pull the trigger so it'll drop the hammer while keeping a little bit of pressure on this pin, just to ensure that it stays in that notch. So keep a little bit of pressure and pull the trigger, and it's going to drop the hammer down. Now you can pull down on this T-handle and get it fit in the notches. So I had to put the camera down just to get that back in the notches. It takes a little bit of pressure to compress that spring down to get that T end of the spring in these notches on the trigger housing. But now it's back together, and you can work the bolt, make sure everything goes right. Well, now it's in the firing position, and again I was showing you this lever right here. You can see that moves down when the bolt goes up. Keep in mind the gun's upside down, so when the bolt goes up, that moves. So now the trigger won't pull. But when the bolt goes back up, it lets you fire. So that's it. I'm going to put it back together. Camera's running low on battery, so let me know what you think, if that's what you guys wanted to see or not. Sorry it took so long to get this video out. Been a little busy and haven't shot it, so I haven't really had a need to clean it. I'm going to actually pull it back apart and clean it now. But that's it. See you later.